The live today. Today we are talking about investing in low-income communities. Specifically, we thought about this particular topic because a lot of times whenever people think about investing in real estate, they feel, oh my God, can I make money here? Can I make money here? Can I make money in the middle? In general, you can make money investing a lot of money investing in low-income communities. You can make a lot of money investing in, kind of the C plus B suburbs. You can invest in A suburbs, right? The question you have to think about is what fits my business model the best, understanding what are the challenges when I'm investing in a low-income community versus in a high-income community versus kind of in the middle, right? They're going to have different challenges, yet what we have to know is how do we go about it? What are some of the factors that you may want to consider? What are some of the things that we want to look at, think about, and how do we protect the downside, right? There's a downside and an upside to every single way of doing it. Not one way of doing it is right or wrong. It's just that I prefer to do it a certain way. You may say, I prefer to do it a different way, as long as you know how to underwrite that risk and make money with it. So let's get started. So as we start, I want to remind everybody, if you're a member of Burr Cash Flow Investors, then make sure you join and bring your friends. If you're not a member, I should say, then bring your friends, bring your family, because the whole point of this is that every single week as we do these, we want to provide lots of solution and lots of real live information. Also, there is a giveaway for two, which we're doing. If you invite your friends, you invite your family. So we will give you a cruise. Somebody's name will get drawn. So if you invite lots of people, you will have a higher chance of winning. So please support the group, invite people, and for every 3-day, we're doing that. So after the 3-day, next week is 3-day, by the way. If you haven't registered, andrewholmesevents.com. I think yesterday was the last time in terms of the price going up. I believe that Lori extended it through today because we have tons of people suddenly want to register last minute. So I think it was extended through today, 12 o'clock tonight. So just because of all the late signups, and then people start calling suddenly. So please make sure that you register. If you have a spouse, you have a friend that you would like to bring to a 3-day, there is a complimentary ticket that is available. Let Lori know, and with your registration, she will let your friend or spouse join you. Having said that, we're super thrilled because guess where we're going to be next Friday at this time, at this place? We'll be at the 3-day on February the 24th. Having said that, let's get started. So today, as we talk about low income communities, right? So let's kind of understand what are the 3 different categories of investment potentials you have as it relates to income, right? A lot of times people think about when you say low income community, they may look at, oh my God, are you investing in slums? No, that's not what it is, right? If you understand that there are going to be parts of town that are going to have more affluent people living in it. There are going to be parts of town that you're going to have more bread and butter income. And then you're going to have more affluent parts of town where you're going to have maybe a little bit lower threshold for income. So now, what do we have to think about when we think about real estate? Now, most real estate people think about it based on, low income, that means there's a lot of properties and there's a lot of properties that need a lot of work. So that's what I'm going to go do, buy cheap houses. Even if I have cheap tenants, I get Section 8 income or housing choice voucher, whatever you want to call that particular program. And then I'm good, man. I don't give a shit, right? That's kind of the attitude because they look at it as, oh my God, I'm in and I'm going to make money because even though I have to deal with low income issues, right? I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Now, if you choose to be a slumlord, that's totally fine, right? I don't think any of us want to do that. Yet, having said that, I think in the low-income housing, you can actually make a lot of money. In fact, if you look at dollar per dollar, you could probably have more opportunity, right? If you really, really, really know what you're doing in the lower income housing compared to the to the higher income housing. Now, as we start, you have to think about this, right? Let's just say I'm somebody that lives in California and I'm, let's say, living in Santa Barbara, right? And I have a good job, or I'm living in San Jose or somewhere where I have a really great job. I work for a tech company. I make good amount of money, right? And I'm going to basically say, hey, where in the country are the places where I could go. I could go to Kansas. Because in properties in California are going to be too expensive. So I really can't generate cash flow. So I'm going to go to the mid-America, right? I'm going to go to all the places that are in mid-part of America, and that's where I'm going to go invest, right? And I'm going to go look for the cheap housing. Right now, you could go to a place like, Kansas. You could go to a lot of other places. You could go to Milwaukee. You could come to Chicago, and you look at Chicago. You're like, oh my God, Chicago's got its challenges, but in terms of pricing of the properties versus the rents, it's number one. It's number one in the country, meaning the lowest amount of prices relative to some of the highest rents in the country. I'm not saying this has the highest rents. What I'm saying is the relative delta, right, is the highest in a place like Chicago, which is crazy, right? And that has been the case since 2009 or 10 or 11, continuously, year over year. If you look at the spread between the price of the properties versus what you get relative to the rent, the delta is the highest. Hence, Chicago is the number one rental market in terms of cash flow. So now, if you look at it, well, I'm going to invest in some of the challenging parts of Chicago. So if I was going to invest in some of the challenging parts of Chicago, now, challenging parts, meaning a economically poorer area, right, in Chicago is not going to be the same as an economically poorer area in Columbus, Ohio. It's not going to be the same as in Florida. Right? Generally, in Florida, an economically poorer area is going to be away from bigger cities. There are parts of Florida which is going to have that, like Tampa. Tampa has an area which used to be Ybor City, where all the cigar factories used to be. And then there's a pocket in there that still today is kind of challenged, right? But yet, there was a big resurgence in Ybor City, and a lot of the new places, there's a lot of restaurants, there's a lot of factories, there's a lot of stuff that has come back. But yet there's a pocket where it's economically challenged. So what are the things I have to think about? Number one, I have to think about is, what is my investor profile? And this is really important. Just because somebody else does something, it does not make sense for you and I to do it. So a lot of times what happens is that we go, when we're new in real estate, we listen to a speaker, we listen to somebody, and they're like, oh my God, this guy is so successful doing X, Y, Z. Then that's what I'm going to do, right? But listen, if somebody is trying to go to Paris on a vacation and you're trying to go to Portugal, right, you're not going to get on the same flight that they're going to Paris. And just because they're going to Paris and you want to go to Portugal, neither one of them is right or wrong. It is what it is, right? Because your goal may be different. And if you're starting out from Chicago to go to Paris versus you're starting out from LA to go to Paris, even though the destination is the same, the flights are going to be two different flights, right? The flight from LA may go from LA to Newark to Paris. But the flight from Chicago, you may have a direct flight from Chicago directly into Paris, right? So what we have to think about is that what is the vehicle and why are we doing what we're doing? If we're going to invest in areas that are lower income communities, some of the things that you should be thinking about, and if somebody was in mastery, here's what we would say to them. Number one is, what is your investor profile? This is even before you do area selection. It's going to be number one, what is your profile? Meaning, who are you? So if I'm a tech dude sitting in San Jose, probably investing in Chicago, some of the tough neighborhoods, would not be a good choice at all whatsoever, period. Why? Because you're going to have to rely on a third-party management that is going to help you buy a property or two or three or four, right? They're probably going to be turnkey operators that are going to have a huge markup. And they're going to sell you these properties, in most of the cases, at full retail value. So for you to go and basically try to manage a property through somebody else in a tough area, it's going to be tough. Now, what about if you live in Chicago? If you live in Schaumburg and you're going to manage a property in certain parts of Chicago where it's very tough, unless you have a lot of experience, unless you know how to make properties work over there really well in that particular pocket, guess what? Owning a property in the suburbs versus owning a property in a pocket like that is going to be different, right? And the management style, what are the things you have to look for, are going to be different. So now let me say, who is it good for? So there's an example I can think of right here in Chicago, a guy by the name of Jared Cott. So Jared owns a company called Marble Stone Properties. And Jared started investing in some of the toughest neighborhoods in Chicago, some of the toughest neighborhoods, right? And he started back in 2012, 13, 14, around that era when these properties had not turned yet, meaning they had gone through a huge downturn. Property prices were devastated. Literally, he's buying 2 and 3 unit properties at that time for $20, $25, $30,000, literally, and then fixing them up, and the back end is worth 200. Right? Now, for him, because he lives within the community, he works within the community, he knows the nuances of that community, and he knows who are the people that are going to basically, what is he going to have to do to be able to invest there? For him, he has done exceptionally well with it. Now, me, on the other side, if I'm in the suburbs and I think I'm going to duplicate what Jared duplicates, what Jared does in that area, it is not a good idea. Does that mean that investing in a low income community does not work? No, that's not what it means. What it means is because my investor profile is different, and because I cannot manage and or rehab in certain neighborhoods, right? What happens is that that's why I would fail. Not that I would fail, but the reason I would fail is because I don't know how to run that. Now, what are some of the challenges that come with low-income communities, and how do you overcome them? So some of the challenges that come with investing in low-income communities are, number one, you're obviously going to have an issue with crime. Number two, you're going to find a lot of properties that are going to be possibly good opportunities. But number three is you're going to have to do an incredibly lot of work. Because with some of the areas that are lower income, if there's a crime issue, it's all driven by economics, understand. Right? It's economics. There's no businesses in the area. Hence, people who have jobs, who do well for themselves, they move out. Now there's more vacant properties, so then landlords move in. Landlords, if the property is not well maintained, the city may have fines, this and that. The properties get abandoned. When the abandoned things comes in, somebody breaks into the property, they steal copper, this or that. There's broken windows, boom, leads to basically a very devastated area. Right? And there are pockets of Chicago that are there. And this is not based on a racial thing. This is just a fact, right? You and I can't do anything about it. We just have to understand, how do we deal with it? And if we want to deal with it, and if we're going to deal with it, then what are some of the compensating factors we have to consider? So number one, if I'm going to look at an area or a community that has high crime, that has some other challenges, economic challenges, and you are attracting lower income tenants, then I want an extraordinarily high return, right? If I'm going to invest there, why am I going to invest there? I'm going to invest there only if, number one, I can manage it. Number two, I see a lot of opportunity, meaning by investing in the community, I can buy the properties really cheap. I can improve them, and I have a huge upside, right? If the upside is not extraordinarily big, why am I going to go there? Right? So if I'm investing in the suburbs, I buy a property, and let's say, so on an average property that I would own today, right? We're going to look for minimum 45%, 50%, 60% cash on cash returns. Most of the properties that I own, I have zero money stuck after purchase, rehab, refi, right? And I have 25% equity. So if I have that opportunity available in the suburbs already, why am I going to go and buy in low income areas? Now, here's why I would buy. I would buy if there was an opportunity over there that was even potentially higher, right? If it was even potentially higher, or there's a great building, which is maybe this is the pocket which is really bad, this building is 2 blocks away. Because the big issue with some of these areas is you could literally have one block where on one side of the block, you're like, there's no way. But on the other side of the block, you're like, all day long, I'll buy the property, right? It's close to a school. It's close to a police station. It's close to maybe a childcare facility where there's going to be a lot of cop presence. There's going to be basically, they're not going to allow any sort of nonsense, right? It's a very well-lit area. So anything in that particular block, the buildings are beautiful. Now, and there are more opportunities because they're not going to be relatively as much money flowing to that area. So if I'm going to invest there, what I have to have is, number one, the right profile. Number two, I have to be really good at management, because the management style that you're going to use in the suburbs is not going to be the same as the management style, because the management in some of these economically poor areas, you're going to have a lot of hands-on management. You're going to pay really, really, really close attention to some of these pockets, right? And so why? Because those pockets can change. Your tenants, if the economy is downturning, suddenly, right, a flat tire for somebody who's economically challenged, so let's say Section 8 is covering 90% of the rent, they have to come up with the 10%. Well, if they have a flat tire, if they get into an accident, something happens, right? They have a part-time job, they lose the part-time job, they're having a baby, right? Those types of things. That creates a lot of stress on the tenant. So the tenant may not be able to pay. So unless I have an extraordinarily upside, right, then I'm not going to invest there. But in lower income properties, you need to have a higher cash flow. Because if you're not going to get higher cash flow, then why am I not going to just invest in nice B neighborhoods? See, there has to be some compensating factor, right? That there is other benefits you're getting because you're investing in lower income communities. Now, the advantage of lower income communities, right? You're going to have a lot of lower income communities are going to have some sort of an assistance for people that live there, right? So it may be called a housing choice voucher program. Chicago has a program. Every state has a program. It used to be called Section 8. Now there's some other name for it. It's called housing choice, I believe. In Chicago, it's Chicago Housing Choice or something like that, the name for it. And there's tons of programs like that. A lot of times when investors think about it, they're like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do. Or, oh, no, I don't do that. What you have to think about is your profile as an investor fit for doing that one thing? So I'll give you an example. Traditionally, I have bought properties that are in the suburbs. Now I started buying some properties in some particular pockets of Chicago, which I consider to be excellent pockets, meaning I consider to be nice, solid bread and butter neighborhoods. They're just beautiful neighborhoods that I feel have a huge upside, and they're great. So I'm buying over there. But recently I looked at a building in what I would consider not a quote unquote a low income community, but certainly it's going to be much lower income than what I'm generally used to in the suburbs. So in that particular pocket, the first thing I did was when I looked at the building, I'm like, oh my God, I think there's an opportunity here. Now, I'm not 100%, but I feel, given the block where it's located, given the proximity to some other really very, very, very positive things, I feel it's not a building problem, it's not a location problem, it's a management problem. Because the people who are managing this building, this happens to be a fairly good-sized multi-unit building, generally I wouldn't be attracted to that. But yet, here the price is so good, the cash flow will be so good, the size of the units is so much positive that the problems that do exist are resolvable problems, right? So I'm getting a huge upside. And the upside is greater because I can own this building for a very long period of time. And because of the economic location given to what couple things that it's close to. And I feel it's very positive. So I'm not going to try to manage it. So I pick up the phone and I call our buddy, Jared. And I'm like, hey, man, what do you think? Right? Do you approve of it? He's like, Andrew, don't even worry about it. If you want somebody to come in and partner with you, I'm all in. Right? Now, somebody who has built a big portfolio, I know what his cash flow situation is. I understand very well what his equity in these things is. He is a qualified property manager because today he does that for a lot of people, and we have tried him on certain properties, and he's done an excellent job. So for him to manage that, it would make much more sense, and for him to do the rehab. Because when you're investing in some of these communities, you're going to have your copper stolen. You're going to have problems like your air conditioning units are going to be stolen. But yet, with a lot of these communities, you have to know who's the person who lives next door. Who's the person on the block that can help you not keep an eye on your property so that things are not stolen. Now, that's very strange for me, living in the suburbs. But for somebody like Jared, he understands the nuances of how to work there. So should you buy in a low-income community or should you not buy in a low-income community, you have to base it on who, number one, is going to manage it. Number two, you have to be really, really tight on your area selection. See, if you're in the suburbs, of a place like Chicago, or if you're in Florida or whatever, right? It's going to be very different. In an area like Florida, if you look at a community which would call a community, meaning an aspirational community, affluent community, you can have bigger, newer houses closer to the beach, that sort of thing. As you get away, and what a lower income community, even in Florida, generally, and this is a general statement, so please take that with a grain of salt, because I mean there is a pocket of Miami, right, that has similar sort of issues like Chicago does, right? It's a lower income pocket, and guess what? There are it's very high on crime, and there are a lot of inherent issues, right? But Tampa has a pocket like that, but it's not quite as big. Orlando has a lower income pocket, but in general, the state of Florida, right, is not going to have as crazy issues as Chicago will. Well, higher density, bigger population group, right? So hence you have a bigger area general to that it has issues. But a economically poorer area in Florida is going to have a lot more trailers, right? It's going to have a lot of people that are they make interesting choices. But your crime rate over there, meaning serious crime. We're not talking about somebody's bicycle is stolen and that kind of stuff. We're talking about serious crime, right? Meaning gunshots, meaning somebody getting killed, like those types of things. They are going to be still lower statistically in an area like Florida. So investing in an area like Florida, where you have a lower income community, your eviction laws in Florida are going to be different. Your eviction laws in Indiana, right next door, they're going to be different. So when you're investing in Chicago type of an area, it's going to be tough to get these tenants out. You're going to have people that may move into your property, and guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a hell of a time getting them out. So what that all of those things means is this: it's not necessarily good or it's bad. What it is that you have to understand, who am I? Am I equipped to deal with these challenges that this community offers, right? Number one. And then the second thing is that, can I still make this work? If you're doing it just because, oh my God, I see an opportunity, I'm going to go do flips there, it actually will not make sense. Because when we talk specifically about flipping, when we talk specifically, I'll give you guys an example. So if you're buying properties in some of the really challenged neighborhoods in Chicago, they're going to be older neighborhoods. These flips are going to need a complete gut. And these are a lot of times frame brick properties. They have lathe, they have plaster in them. So for you to do a rehab over there, it's going to be $100,000 to $120,000 rehab, right? And now you have to go over and above to be able to turn that property from a devastated property to something which is absolutely beautiful, right? And it's over the top rehab. Whereas you could come out to the suburbs, do a $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 rehab, light paint, bathroom, kitchen update, throw granite countertops or what's that thing nowadays we use? Anyways, it's a hard surface. I'm quartz or quartz counters, and you return on that cash on cash return. See, if you're doing 100,000 in rehab, you're not going to make 100,000. You're probably going to make 40, 50, 60 max. But if you're doing a 40,000 rehab, you can make 45, 50. Relative to the rehab. Now, does that mean, well, Andrew, is this good? Is this bad? It's not good or bad. It's just that, do you necessarily do that much work and make relatively as high a return, right? That's like saying, hey, listen, man, if you're basically, doing an oil change on a Honda or a Hyundai, right, your margins are going to be thin. If you're doing a oil change on a Rolls Royce, your margin is going to be huge, right? Because the oil is the oil, synthetic or not, or maybe a little bit better quality oil. At the end of the day, on one, they're going to charge you thousands of dollars. On one, they're going to charge you $60, right? You're really telling me that the oil and the filter is that much better in a Rolls rather than a Honda? No, but with Rolls, you're not going to have as much customers and as much turnover, right? You're not going to be doing any volume. And you're going to basically be much more service-oriented. On a Honda or a Hyundai, you're going to have to turn the customers, and depending on how you run your dealership, the Honda dealership may be more profitable, or the Rolls dealership may be more profitable. It just depends. So what I'm trying to say is this, that when you're investing in a low-income community, there's incredible opportunity. Now, we get today a lot of people from certain parts of town, which may be low-income communities, and they're like, Andrew, man, we grew up there, right? So we understand the community. I'm like, if you grew up in the community, do not go outside of your community. Do flips there. Buy properties there. Why? Because your community has a lot of advantages. A lot of people from outside, they'll come there, they'll absolutely get their clock cleaned. But guess what? If you truly understand the community, you will have a lot of opportunity where people from the outside may not understand. See, real estate has always been local and it'll always be local. Zillow tried, Redfin tried, everybody has tried this. Oh, we're going to figure out this AI. We're going to have this perfect algorithms. We're going to have the genius people sitting somewhere and they're going to figure out how to buy the perfect house. Guess what, guys? At least so far, right? It hasn't worked. And unless you can have a robot that comes in the house, looks at the house, and can make that sort of a human decision and take all the factors that you can't basically put it in terms of math, right? It's based on emotions, is understanding what is going on in the neighborhood. Unless that can be done, this process is not possible to automate this process. It's easy to buy in an area, which is a suburb. You get a big enough discount. There's 100 houses that look the exact the same in the tract. Okay, then it's just based on what is the condition of the property. Based on the condition, you're going to pay a certain discount on the property. Boom, you're good to go, right? But if you are in an area which has low income housing, there are some of the most fabulous opportunities that are available there. One thing you have to be careful of, you really have to understand area selection. And you have to understand the area selection based on block by block, every which way, north or south or east or west, because literally you could have one block where you have a lot of frame houses and it's a terrible block to invest on. And then you have another block next door, which is all brick properties, and it's a great investment. You could have one block where you have a lot of multifamily properties, and it may have much higher crime. You could be 2 blocks away where you have a row of single-family brick bungalows or brick type of ranches, and guess what? The difference is not the color of the skin of the people. The difference is the people, when they live in a multi-unit buildings, and there's a lot of them, the heavier concentration, you have kids that are teenagers, generally a bunch of teenagers that live in close proximity, and they have time on their hands, they're not going to go to a Bible study, right? They're going to come up with crazy things to do. And so what happens is on one street, because you have a high amount of multi-unit properties, so if there's single families that are right across from it, those single families are not going to be worth as much. Why? Because you have a high dense population. Yet 2 blocks away, if there's all single families on both sides of the streets, those single families will sell for significantly more, and you'll have significantly less crime-related issues. Why? Because every one of the neighbors cares about the block they're on. That doesn't mean that people here don't care. But over time, what happens is people who move on into those blocks are people who can afford properties that are a little bit cheaper. They're willing to compromise because of the high density is what creates those problems, right? And the more you have a certain group of people, in terms of certain age group of people, and you put them in a high density population, that's bound to be generally anywhere from 12, 13, 14 years old to about 30, right? Generally 30, 35 is generally where you're going to see with people in that age group is where you're going to see problems. Generally, as people get to 40, 45, that sort of age group, they start growing out of the things maybe they would have done at a time in their lives when your brain is not fully developed yet, right? So hopefully this makes sense. So if you are investing in lower income housing, there is a ton of opportunity. And I will say in a mile by mile square, there's more opportunity there than it is in the suburbs, because there are more deals to be found there. There's a lot more wholesales you can do. There's a lot more flips you can do. But the amount of work you're going to have to do is also going to be incredible. In the suburbs, you're going to have to do, or in nicer areas, you're going to have to do more looking. You're going to find more gems here, but how you basically polish them and make them into gemstone is going to look a little bit different depending on the area that you're in. Having said that, hopefully you guys got something out of it, click on the link, which is andrewholmesevents.com. Ms. Denise from Guaranteed Rate is the sponsor for today's live broadcast, and please reach out to her if you have any needs in terms of getting a 203K loan done, an FHA loan done, a residential mortgage, or if you want to buy a bigger property, or if you want to buy more rental properties. Having said that, super thrilled. 1 week to go, guys. 7 days, literally. On Friday, we will see you at the 3-day at andrewholmesevents.com. Again, remember, please refer your friends, your family to Burr Cash Flow Investors so that we can provide as much as value as we humanly can. And let's learn, let's grow together, and we'll see you at the 3-day.